Year 3, Part 3. When Ray came home from Queens in the spring, the happy possessor of a teacher's license, she got the home school and settled down for a summer of good fun before school should open. Fun, to Ray, at this stage meant beaux, and as Judy said, they were standing in line. Pat couldn't quite get used to the idea of little Cuddles being really old enough to have beaux, but Ray herself had no doubts on that point, and she admitted quite candidly that she liked having them. Not that she ever flirted, in spite of the Binnies. College has improved Ray Gardner some, Mrs. Binney was reported to have said, but it ain't cured her of being boy crazy. Ray just looked. "Come," said that look, "I know a secret you would like to know, and no one can tell it to you but me." She was not really as pretty as Winnie, or as witty as Pat, but there was magic in her. What Tilly Tuck called glamour, symbolically speaking. "The little monkey has a way with her," said Uncle Tom. And the youth of both Glens knew it. It did not matter how much or how severely she snubbed them. This creature of cruelty and loveliness held them in thrall. Long Alec complained that Silverbush was literally overrun, and that they never had a quiet Sunday any more. But Judy would listen to no such growling. "Would you be wanting your girls to be like John B. Madison's?" she inquired sarcastically. "6 of them there, and never a beau to divide between them." "There's reason in all things," protested Long Alec, who liked to have an undisturbed Sunday afternoon nap. "Not in beaux," said Judy shrewdly, "and I'm mindin' that the yard at the bay shore used to be full of rings on Sunday afternoons. Young Alec Gardner's among them. Don't be forgettin' you were once young, Long Alec. We'll all have a bit of quiet fun at times watchin' the antics. Were you hearin' what happened to Just Dog last Sunday afternoon, when one of the young short-reed sprouts, Lloyd I'm thinkin' his name was sittin' on the front porch steps, lookin' kind of as holy and solemn, for all the world like his old grandfather Short-reed at prayer meeting? Sure, and the poor baste, not meanin' Lloyd, met up with a rat in the stone dyke behind the church barn and cornered it. But me Mr. Rat put up a fight and clammed his teeth in Just Dog's jaw. Such howlin' you never did be hearin' as he tore across the yard and through me kitchen and the hall and out past the young fry on the steps and through me bed of petunias. Roarin' down the lane he went, the rat still holdin' on tight. The girls went into kinks and Tilly Tuck come bucketing out, rail indignant, and sayin' the divil himself must have got into the modern rats. Oh, says I, don't be speaking so flippant of the divil, Mr. Tilly Tuck. He's an ancient old lad and should be respected, says I. Lloyd Short-reed looked rail shocked. And no wonder. I don't hold with such goings on in my house on Sunday. "Sure, and who could be helping it?" protested Judy. "It was Just Dog's doings entirely. Going rat hunting on Sunday. Before that the young fry were all quiet and sober like. As for Tilly Tuck and his language, everybody do be knowing him. It's well known he didn't larn it at Silverbush. Just Dog did be coming back later on with no rat attached, rail making chasant like. Lloyd hasn't been back since, and good riddance, the Short-reeds do be having no sense of humour." "Lloyd's a very decent fellow," said Long Alec shortly. "And that clever with his needle," added Judy slyly. "He did be piecing a whole quilt when he was but 4 years old, and he's never been able to live it down. His mother brings it out and shows it round whenever company comes." Long Alec got up and went out. He knew he was no match for Judy. They celebrated Ray's homecoming by another party, to which all Ray's college friends came. Ray loved dancing. Her very slippers, if left to themselves, would have danced the whole night through. But Pat's feet were not as light, and they had been at the last party. Sid was not there. Sid was a very remote and unhappy boy. There had been a social sensation in North Glen early in the winter. Dorothy Milton, who had been engaged to Sid for 2 years, ran away with and married her cousin from Halifax, a dissipated, fascinating youth who travelled for a Halifax firm. Sid would have nothing of sympathy from his family. He would not talk of the matter at all, but he had been hard and bitter and defiant ever since, and Pat felt hopelessly cut off from him. He worked feverishly, but he came and went among his own like a stranger. "Patience," said Mother. "It will wear away in time. Poor Dorothy. I'm sorrier for her than for Sid." "I'm not," sobbed Pat fiercely. "I hate her for breaking Sid's heart." Oh, everybody's heart gets a bit of a crack at one time or another," said Judy. "Siddy isn't the first boy to be jilted, and he won't be the last, as long as the poor girls haven't got the sense that God gave geese." But Judy didn't like to look at Sid's eyes herself. When the party was over, Pat and Ray went by a mossy, velvety path to their tent in the bush, amid a growth of young, white, wild cherry trees. They had achieved their long-cherished dream of sleeping out in the silver bush, and the reality was more beautiful than the dream. Even when the wind blew the tent down on them one night, and little Mary was half smothered before they could find her. There was another new baby at the bay shore, and little Mary had been committed to the care of Aunt Pat until her mother should be about. They all loved little Mary, but Aunt Pat adored and spoiled her. To see little Mary running about in the garden on her dear chubby legs, pausing now and then to lift a flower to her small nose, or following Judy out to feed the chickens, or chasing kittens in the old barns, where generations of furry things had frisked their little lives and ceased to be, gave Pat never-ending thrills. And the questions she would ask. "Aunt Pat, why weren't ears made plain? Aunt Pat, have flowers little souls? Where do the days go, Aunt Pat? They must go somewhere. Does God live in Judy's blue chest, Aunt Pat?" Once or twice the thought came to Pat that to marry and have a dimpled question mark like this of your very own might even make up for the loss of Silverbush. Judy came through the scented darkness to see if they were all right and gossip a little about various things. Judy had been to a funeral that day, a very unusual dissipation for her, but old William Madison at the bridge died, and Judy had worked a few months for his mother before coming to Silverbush. "Sure, and everything went off very well. It was the grand funeral he had, and he'd have been rael well pleased if he could have seen it. He had great fun arranging it all, I'm told. Oh, and he died very politely, asking them all to excuse him for the bother he was putting them to. His old Aunt Polly was rael vexed because she didn't be getting the sight at the funeral she thought she should have, but nobody else had any fault to find with the programme. It do be hard to please everyone. Polly Madison is one of the holy Christians, holier than any of them, I'm hearing." For the Go Preacher's disciples had formed themselves into a holy Christian church, and were cruelly referred to in the Glen as the Holy Christians. "I hear they're going to build a church," said Pat. "That they are, but they're not calling it a church. It do be a place of meeting. The same Aunt Polly do be giving the land for it, and Mr. Wheeler is coming back to be their minister, or their shepherd, as they do be saying, not approving of ministers or of paying them salaries either. He'll be living on air, no doubt. Aunt Polly says he is very spiritual, but I'm thinking it's only the way he was of lifting his eyes and taffing her up. Anyway, her husband don't be holding with the newfangled religions. 'Are you prepared to die?' the Go Preacher asked him real solemn like, I'm told. But old Jim Polly was always a hard nut to crack. Better be asking if I'm prepared to live, says he. Living comes first, says he. Pat had detected a sudden movement of Ray's when Judy mentioned Mr. Wheeler's name, and felt her worry increase. Suppose he made up to Ray again,